Um, Hi everyone. So I'm going to put that here. You are all sitting way too far away to read it. And so my name is Marie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm French and I'm based in relocating to Brussels at the moment. And I do a million different things. So people have a lot of problems pinpointing me somewhere. But the bottom line is that I work very much internationally as an advisor, a consultant, a researcher, and at the intersection of a lot of different disciplines with the performing arts. So I worked for a while with the European Dance House Network, but I work also primarily at the moment with Key Change, which is a gender equality initiative in the music sector, promoting women and gender minority on stage and backstage globally. So I'm very active on that, and I run a lot of project with a lot of international funding, which I will be talking about today. And the last part, and that's why there is a logo of On the Move, I'm the president of On the Move, which is a cultural mobility information network. And again, I will talk about this, so not to worry too much about this. So basically, I'm really grateful that Lena did her lecture yesterday, because I got to read your presentation outside. So I kind of have a bit of an idea of, what you're looking for. At least I know that some of you are very much interested in the international aspect of your work. So that's a plus point for me. That makes my life much easier right now. But so where to begin is, always a good question to ask yourself. And when talking about working internationally, there are a lot of questions that will pop into your mind, and that's a bit what we are going through today. So what I will be talking about is indeed, so how do you find the destination where you want to go? How do you follow through on invitations, on the meeting that you are having today and in the whole week? So how do you continue from that, from all the people you have met? How do you turn this into a professional opportunity later on? Obviously, how do you find funding for that? Because it doesn't come for free to be able to go somewhere. But also on a more practical note, how do you deal with social security? What happens if a pandemic breaks down again and you are trapped abroad? So how do you come back home? This kind of stuff. Like, where do you find help for all these kind of things? Because help is there, and help is, in many cases, for free if you know where to ask. And many more consideration about working outside your own context with people that you don't know yet. So I'm going to talk a bit about those aspects, so to make sure that you have this as you begin and you are guided through those parts. And an important point, especially in the dance sector, which has been very much criticized over the last 15 years at least, is if working across border is a choice or a necessity. I think a lot of you are very excited about traveling and going places and discovering the world. And I mean, I've been there and I'm still there, and it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'm here today. It took me 10 hours to get here, but I'm really excited to be here. Like, even with all the obstacles, it's still very much a pleasure. But when you do that every week and you go to a different place and you meet new people, it is also exhausting. It takes a toll on your mental health. It is difficult to sustain relationships, and if you want to build a family, I mean, I'm a woman myself. If I want to build a family and still be mobile, there are a lot of stuff that comes in the mix of that. So I'm going to talk a bit about that to make sure that you have heard it, that it starts going through your brain and go from there. But I actually want to hear from you when I say all of this, like, why go abroad? What kind of motivation do you have with that? What resonates? Not all at once, just...
To see the dance scenes in other parts of the world, because we're very familiar with what's close to us, the countries close to us, but other parts of the world are very, very interesting.
Definitely. Are there other reasons why you would like to go abroad?
I think I have two sides, one positive and one negative side for me. Like, one is similar to what also you said, like seeing other dance scenes, other theaters, other works. And one for me was also like there was nothing for me in the country where I was born.
And when you mean nothing, I mean, there is a dance scene, I imagine there is...
Of course, just like a very legal range of options, I would say, and no founding, no respect for the art.
There's also something about disorienting the body. So, for instance, I'm going out of Europe this fall and I'm doing it because of my Europeanness. So there's something of like getting another perspective on things that I've naturalized, things that I'm assuming, things that I'm taking for granted and that I operate through and with. And I think that comes a lot when you are in another context, that you are forced to slow down, you're forced to reorient your sensuous apparatus. So maybe it's not so much about like, it's also about seeing what's out there, but it's I think it also provides a possibility to really critically question what is back there.
Yeah. I mean, you're very right on that. It's both a movement towards the outside and discovering what is out there, but it's very much also about learning about yourself, going through this, and it can be quite overwhelming as well, because you are doing both at the same time, and you not always have the luxury to stay for a long period of time, which you will need actually in order to really explore all of this. So sometimes you have to do this over less than a week, and it takes a toll on the body, but it takes also a toll on the mind to be able to process all of this. But indeed, building time around this is very important. I'm realizing that my slides are a bit backwards, because we will come back to all those points in about 3 slides, but what I wanted to mention are more also like different ways of going abroad. And you mentioned inspiration, which is usually quite at the beginning of professional work, let's say, if you are creating work, if you are going to tour it later. That would be more about exploration and prospection, the first point on the slide. I can also share the slides later on with the team, and you can get them and get back to them, so no worries about that. But so exploration and prospection, those are usually, they take the shape of a short-term visit. It can be visits to friends, actually. It can be just to go and explore. There are very few funds which enable you to do that, but it is actually possible in some respects. Other models in order to go abroad are to take part in events, in festivals, in fairs, so not necessarily as a performing artist yourself, but also just to attend, to see the shows, to be able to discover what is out there. There are transnational networks of professionals. So if you think of Aerowaves or EDN, they organize meetings regularly, but also more broadly with AETM, which is a network also for the performing arts in Europe. They do all of this. I'm guessing maybe, Lena, you talked about networking in that way yesterday, tiny bit, so I'm not going to necessarily go too much on that. Capacity building is what you're doing now, for instance, to make sure that you do workshop, postgraduate trainings, and masterclasses. Those exist throughout the world. Some are fairly short, over a couple of days. Some are usually, let's say, about a week, 2 weeks max. That's usually the format you would go for. But what you could also imagine in that way in terms of further learning can also be to approach a dance company or a venue or another type of an organization and do a work placement with them. So in the sort of an internship to understand also different aspects of the dance scene and the context in another country. So you can also not only see yourself as a dancer, but also as a professional within the dance sector and try to explore more from this perspective as well. Project development is the more somewhat fun, I would say also, is just to be able to create, to co-produce, or to produce, to co-produce, to go on a residency, to do a research stay, so something a bit longer where you will also get to really develop your own work, work with other dancers, work on a new play. And then export and circulation, this is very much about touring, so you have a finished product, so to say, if I talk into policy language, because it's also where I come from. But so you have something that you want to present, and then you will tour with that creation. This is a very long slide, but this is a bit to explain the wording that you will see in open calls, in funding, in in the policy world, in the network, so they speak. So it's not necessarily oriented toward you as dancers, but it's important that you understand and that you know those words. So because they are used also then in opportunities where there is a funding also for you to go abroad. So all those things about working internationally that are phrased under this big concept of cultural mobility. And mobility doesn't necessarily mean a lot to you directly, but it's really where you will find those opportunities online. If you are looking for funding, this is definitely under those words that you will find it. So that's why I'm really putting this out there. And again, sending those slides later. But for you to be able to apply for the funding, it's important that you know those words. It will help the people reading your application that you actually know what you're talking about. So I've highlighted a few things. So mobility is a central component of your professional life, basically. It involves a temporary cross-border movement. So it's not about you relocating somewhere perpetually and, let's say, what I'm doing right now, moving to Brussels. This is not cultural mobility. I'm actually migrating to a new country. But what you are doing now this week, this is very much cultural mobility. So coming to a place for a very short period of time. I know that some of you are from abroad, right? Raising hands maybe of who is not normally based in Munich. Probably almost everything. Not normally based in Germany. Okay. Not from the EU normally. Sorry. This is painful. I'm asking this, it will come later. You might understand a bit better later why I'm asking this also. And so this is, and mobility, and this is, so working internationally, what is tricky, and you mentioned it a bit on talking about time and the exploration that goes with it. You have both tangible and intangible outcomes. So tangible are the fact that you are going to create a play, for instance, or that you have a degree after a masterclass or this kind of stuff. And intangible is just all the learning and all the process that is still going to go through your mind and will influence your work on the long run. So all of this is part of mobility. And all of this, you can put it forward when you apply for a grant, for instance. Like all of this is what you want to explore, both on the very practical side and also on a more mental, philosophical part of exploring your art. But all of this, what is important to understand, it's all a conscious process. It is your choice to go abroad. It is something that you engage with. And this is very, especially as dancers, are people who are engaging with this physically. You need to understand, like, it's not something that you end up just doing and being abroad. It is something that you decide to do, and you can also decide to roll it back. But so this is a conscious process, and it has a lot of different consideration. Again, I will touch upon it later on cultural, social, political, environmental, ethical, and economic implications. So all of those aspects are part of mobility. That was a very long and boring slide, I know. But again, like, it has its purpose, and I hope you will be able to come back to it later. So I have a few questions now, also for you. I don't want to quiz you and make it uncomfortable for you to share stuff with everyone. You are, of course, very welcome to do so. But this slide, like setting your goal before you even start looking for opportunities, this is quite valuable for you to have in your mind. Like, what do you actually want? Why do you want to go abroad? I've heard a few inspiration, but it goes also beyond that. Where do you want to go? I mean, I can't tell you. There are opportunities everywhere. There are opportunities in Munich, obviously, like here again. But there are some others in the UK. There are some in Brazil. It depends very much what you're looking for, what you want, what drives you. And this, nobody else can say it for you. So that's why for me, like, my job right now is really tough, because I can't tell you about opportunities in a lot of different places, but it doesn't make any sense because it's what drives me, what's in my mind, and that won't really resonate for you. So in order to guide you through this, there are different checklists. Those questions function a bit like a checklist in that way. So I would really recommend for you to, if you have an opportunity in mind, something, a project, to start asking yourselves those questions. So what's Do you have a specific place you want to go? Is it that you want to meet more people? Do you need to be in a festival context? Do you need to be inspired by new work? Or do you need to actually do a retreat in nature and go more in an introvert journey to be able to explore because you have been overwhelmed with too much stimuli for a while? So both are possible, both exist. Again, it's a bit up to you to decide. And at different moment of your career, you will encounter all those different options anyway. Is there a specific country or city you want to explore? I saw some people being interested in certain dance movements or wanting to explore certain practices, certain martial arts, so all of this. Is there a place in the world that is currently very much booming with that? Can you find opportunities there? So that can help you orientate where you look for opportunities and really pinpoint what you're looking for, because otherwise, and trust me really on that, it is overwhelming. There is too much out there, and it's impossible to make a choice, because then you're like, oh, but I can go in a castle in Scotland, or I can go to Aix-en-Provence, or I can go and learn flamenco in Spain. Okay, what am I doing? And then basically you end up sitting at home and doing nothing because it's just too much to process. So it's really important that it comes from you, and the more you're able to answer those questions, the better you will be equipped to go once the opportunity is there, and to really convince also people that they should support you in that process. You probably all have other occupations in your normal day life, only in dance, with other jobs, depending. This will also make it possible for you to go for a certain period of time only. I'm in the very precarious but very nice position of being a freelancer, where I dictate all of this myself. I reached that point. It took me 12 years, where I can decide where I go, when I go, how long not really how long I go, because I have different clients and I can't stay more than 2 or 3 days. So like all of this will influence what kind of mobility opportunity you will even be looking for. Okay, I don't want to have you all asleep in a minute. So I'm going to just ask you a bit, like, at the moment, where do you look for opportunities? Because again, like, if you're all from another place in Munich, you didn't find this here today just randomly. So how do you look for opportunities for now? Where do you look for? Do you have websites that you go to, networks that you go to? Was it through your school? Was it?
I mean, this opportunity was for me through the school.
Okay.
I heard of it before, but it came as a call through the school.
Yeah.
And other things like Facebook groups, okay, sometimes for smaller jobs, or there are some websites also that have newsletters that come once every 2 weeks. So.
Do you have any name of website? I mean,
I think it's called Dancing Opportunities.
Yeah. .org, yeah.
This is one of them. There's another one, but I had to look it up.
Oh, definitely. Is there anyone else? Those are, definitely very important ones for sure.
Because I'm from Czechia, I'm studying in Denmark, and I would also like to find ways how to find information there, but I didn't really succeed with it. Yeah. So I'm receiving a lot of info from Czech culture scene. Yeah. I'm signed up for newsletters, and there are a few organizations taking care of freelance dance artists, yeah, and stuff, and they have Facebook groups. But actually the newsletters are pretty nice, because they also have open calls for funding and when you grow. Yeah. That's cool.
What is the name?
The Czech, but it's all in Czech language, and I think it's just for Czechs, citizens. It's the Theatre Institute is the one that is the head organization.
Definitely. Lena, you wanted to?
I just want to mention a newsletter that I really appreciate, and that's coming out of Finland, with Dancing for Finland, and it's in English, and it's a very good place to get orientated on the Nordic scene and also opportunities. And it's not that I can always match it with things that I'm looking for, but it's still a point of inspiration. And it's also a point where you can get acquainted with the language that you need to use when you later on need to write applications. So,
Definitely.
and then of course on the move, signed up for that.
No, it's called
Dance Info Finland.
Dance Information Finland.
Yeah, Dance Info Finland. So there are a few more. So the one that you see here, basically, so Dancing Opportunity, that's their logo. That's the one that you mentioned with the yellow. So dancingopportunity.org, they're really focused on dance only. There is a lot of different things, different levels as well. They do, I mean, that's where you find primarily calls for auditions. I mean, obviously through Facebook groups and so on, you will find a lot, but if you want professional auditions for dancers, they have quite a lot and more than in other places. EDN, so European Dance House Network, they do also put some opportunities for dancers, not so many, but there are a few through Springback magazine, but also everything behind with Aerowaves and so on. There are opportunities, and check also obviously all their social media. So when I mention those names, it's important to not only see the website and the organization, but also the social media they have. They are usually active on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and they share different stuff at different levels. So On the Move, I will talk a bit about it in a minute, but basically what sets On the Move apart is that we only publish opportunity where travel grants are already included. So there needs to be funding included for us to list the opportunity. We do not list anything where there is no money attached, because we believe that artists, dancers, and cultural professionals already have so much to go through that if we can filter it and make it sure that there is something where money is already there, it will make it easier for people to find those opportunities and for the right person to apply for the right grant, rather than that it goes to the people who already have the info. As mentioned, IETM, so IETM, the International Network for the Performing Arts, they also will share some opportunities, not so often, but they do have a few. All of those are mainly in Europe, though that's why I also wanted to put Culture 360. Culture360.acef.org is a platform from the Asia Europe Foundation. So Asia Europe Foundation, they work on the connection between the Asian and the European continent, and they will publish calls where there is a cross-continental element to it. They do cover every discipline, but also dance. So if you are looking for stuff, for funding, for opportunities that would be more linking you to Asia, or to invite Asian artists also to Europe, they would probably have those kind of opportunities. I do wanted also to put two examples, the Tanzmesse and SINAS as international platforms, so SINAS in Canada and Tanzmesse in Germany. They have very big events themselves, they run those events, but throughout the years, when they are not running the event, they also share a lot of opportunities for choreographers, for the dance sector in general, some also for dancers. So you have to look a bit more in detail if it fits for you. Yeah.
What do you sell the scene thing?
The SINAS?
Yeah.
Let me just wait. Nope, I can't edit this. It's C-I-N-R. Wait. C-I-N-A-R-S. Yeah. You're welcome. And those are just a snapshot. There are more websites, obviously. Facebook group can be really good because they connect the different dancers among themselves. I will write it down, and I need to. No.
You're going to get a publication where all the names and the listings are with the active links, so that's part of the material of these here. So make your notes, but also know there will be additional info.
Yeah. Slideshow. Why is that? Up. So I've just added them here, SINAS and Dance Info Finland that Lena mentioned before. So this way you can see it. Yes?
The Red Sea, it was something in Canada?
Yeah, SINAS. Uprise. Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, I tend to put the logo because then when you see the website again, you will like reconnect to it without. But yeah, and now I'm completely thrown off by the phone. But indeed, you will receive more information. You can always also reach out to me later on and just ask questions, or if you want to connect to a dance platform in another country, or you are looking for something specifically in Portugal. Weirdly enough, I know all of this. It sits in my head, so I'm happy to just give this knowledge away. What you were mentioning about Dance Info Finland is really valuable. There are similar platforms in different countries. And depending on the country, it's more or less funded, so it's more or less developed. I want to mention, for instance, the Centre National de la Danse in France. They have their website extremely detailed in French, really to a level which I don't even know how to process all of this information. But they do have a lot of information in English as well, explaining about the status of artists in France, but also about professional opportunity, about the dance history of France. I mean, there is so much on their website, you can really dive into it. It's really fascinating. But they provide also information on where you find information, support to do stuff in France. There are a lot of dance platforms and showcase events on a national base, which will be also providing this kind of information. You mentioned the information from the Czech Performing Arts. There are those platforms in different countries, but then they also organize professional days, so where they will showcase Czech dance. So that's organized by Tanek Pra most times, and there they will also link you up with a lot of different opportunities. So through the people who organizes those dance days, and I'm thinking, for instance, of Ice Hot, which is roaming through the Nordic countries and just took place in Helsinki some weeks ago. So through the websites of Ice Hot, but also Keja or the Baltic Dance Platform, the Performing Arts Portugal. So all of those, they have specific knowledge about their specific countries or region where they are based. And online throughout the year, when they don't do their event, they share a lot of opportunities relating to those spaces. So again, if you want to do something in Latvia, the Baltic Dance Platform, it's good for you to check the Baltic Dance Platform, see a bit what they've been doing, see which venues they partner with. So try to explore through those national platforms for dance. And again, I can share those in a bit more of a structured way after the lecture, but there are those platforms in quite a few countries. Germany has also a lot on that regard. As I mentioned, so just for you to see a bit for On The Move, how it goes. So On The Move, we don't do event on that level. We list opportunities for you online. This is how the website looked, like just a part of the website looked about 2 days ago. And basically, so when you click on news and finding opportunities, then you get to this. I mean, there is a menu on top, but basically you get to this, and here on the left, you can select performing arts. It's not specific to dance because there are not necessarily enough opportunity to only look at dance, but also because usually there are a lot of crossovers between dance, theater, circus arts. So we list them all together. And then you will see all the calls that are open at this moment where funding is attached to it. So for instance, the residency program at K3 in Hamburg, a PhD program for emerging artistic researcher in Switzerland, and all of those have funding already attached to it. So, and the calls are open, you can apply. So this is how you can find opportunities through On The Move, for instance. Again, as I was saying at the beginning, it can be really overwhelming. There is information, there is so many opportunities, and you really have to check if it's actually for you. So that goes by, as I was saying, setting your goals at first, knowing what you want, knowing what you are looking for at this moment in your career. And that, again, will evolve. But what are you looking for right now? Which space, which art scene do you want to explore? What resonates with you? What you don't want to do as well? Like you don't want to go in an unpaid residency? Well, then you don't look for those and don't apply for those. Like, I know it sounds really basic, but you would be surprised how many times people just start doing all this stuff. But then once you have found, let's say, the K3 residency in Hamburg, we just so you've seen that, you're like, yeah, that's for me, that calls for me, my project fit, it's so great. So the first thing, just write down the deadline. Don't miss the deadline, because that's dumb and that will be painful and you will be like, oh, the deadline was yesterday. Or it's in 3 hours. Like if you know that, just like write it down and put a reminder in your agenda, on your phone, wherever, about at least 3 days before, preferably much longer before, but like just make sure to prepare all of this on time. Make sure that your own stuff is up to date, that you can do already now. Keep your CV up to date, your social media as well, because this is, I've been on the jury of a few granting organizations, and if I'm looking at the Instagram of an artist and I don't see anything that relates to their work, but just about their kittens, I love it, but I'm like, yeah, that's not really helping me to know if you fit for the opportunity or not. So try to make sure you present yourself in the way that you want, with an up-to-date CV, a bio, a portfolio, depending what they will be asking for, what you feel the most comfortable with, what kind of social media you want to share or not. You don't have to put your private Instagram on an application form at all, but just like if you put it, then make sure that it's something that the jury should be seeing.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add on this social media question, because you said like you were work for some brands sometimes. Like, do you feel that in some cases it's really like somehow a requirement to have that as a portfolio, or is it an either or is that like a trend or?
It depends. There are other people who work. Bush, you can also answer these kind of questions. I think it depends very much. It's not either or. In any case, if a portfolio is requested, send your portfolio. Don't send only your social media, because you present your information a bit differently, and it's the portfolio you will curate under your own term in a way. So I would really, myself, I would rather look at that, because I know then you have put an intention in it rather than in social media that are formatted in another way. It depends a bit what you're applying for, but if it's, for me, I would only be interested in your social media if they are really curated toward your art. If it's just your life, it's not necessarily what I would put forward, and as a jury I would be like, yeah, this is not necessarily relevant for the grant you're applying for. But I don't know if, Lena?
No, it's just kind of a comment in terms of applications, because an application form can be quite simple sometimes, and thanks to that. But then there's the appendix part, and don't underestimate the appendix part, because that's also what you were talking about, the CV bio. And so when you have time and you're not really applying for anything, just spend time on making a good presentation, a good appendix that could go into any application, and then once you find a specific application, then you can adjust the parts. But then you're ready, you don't have to do everything from scratch. You have to have that as a base.
Yeah, and keep it up to date. Just seriously, I've seen stuff where artists are applying with something and it all goes up to 2016 and then there is nothing. I'm like, I'm not going to Google you. I need you to tell me like what you have been doing, what you are proud of, and what you have been up to in the last 3 years. Because like what you have been up to 6 years ago, I don't care. It's important. It's definitely, if it was your highlight, that's great. But try to keep it up to date, not necessarily by mentioning every little detail of the last 3 months, but just in any case, you need to show what you have been doing in the last year, last 2 years. That's really what we would be the most interested in. Okay, so, yep.
What about your own website? Is it still a thing or not at all?
It depends. I would say yes in a way, but if it's going to look like crap, no. That's just it can be a nice placeholder to make sure that people can contact you and that your latest work, that anything you want to link to or embed a video, that you don't have to send 5 or 6 video links, but that it's all embedded on one page. That can be make the life of people looking at your work more easy because then everything is presented as you want to show it, rather than again fitting in a framework of someone else or a meta or whatever. So in that sense, that can be very valuable. But if it's going to be just a very bad WordPress template that you don't update, again, like if it's not updated in the last year, then it's a bit of a pity to have that.
And in regards to the website, I'm planning to move the website together with my collective, but each of us will have our own page. So what if we apply as an individual and take this as a collective? Do you think it's a good idea?
I mean, if you can present your own work, it depends, and that's a bit like within the read the call carefully. So who is eligible? If it's only for individual and you send the website of a collective and people cannot see your individual work, then it will be very confusing. If it's clear enough that it's your own work within a bigger collective voice, that's fine. But so it has to match also what you are going to apply for, and be very clear on that. So it depends how you present the information and how you can do that. But so indeed, like with eligible is really important. Are you, as the dancer, eligible for the call, or is it only for choreographers? Do you need to be active for 2 years already? Or is it for young graduates, actually? Or like all of this is going to be written in the call. If it's not written in the call, it's going to be in the FAQ. If it's not in the FAQ, well, then you can start doubting, like, who wrote the open call, because they should have put that down. And in any case, you can contact them. There is always a contact part somewhere. Don't send every random question you have, but on that level of, am I eligible or not? I am French in Belgium and I have 10 years experience. Am I eligible for CADRAI? Definitely not. I mean, not because of those criteria, but because I'm not a dancer. But so, like, just look at that, and if the criteria are not clear, contact them so you don't waste time applying, but you also don't waste their time when they will be looking at your application that doesn't fit in what they would be supporting anyway. When you read the call again, like, try to see what is included or not. So that's why also that's a lot of the work we do also with On The Move, for instance, because we refer to other people's opportunity. So we really list specifically what is going to be included already on the call, what kind of support is provided, and therefore what is not provided. And that can go from anything to everything. So with On The Move, travel is supported, but then is there a production grant or not? Is accommodation provided? Is per diem provided? I mean, the list goes on. Do you get support for visa? Do you get more money if you travel by train? Is it possible to bring partners, collaborators? Is it possible to stay for 1 week, for 2 weeks, like the duration? All of this should be in the call, so try to read that carefully. And this will, again, inform if it matches your wishes or not. What is required of you? Do you need to give a lecture? Do you need to engage with kids? Do you need to, and do you want that as well? Like, again, ask yourself while you're applying. Do you need to be present on site all the time, like 24/7? Or can you, if it's a 9-month opportunity, like some long residency, do you need to be for 9 months there? Or can you go back to your home country for the birthday of your mom? Again, like, seriously, it's really important for you to figure that out and to know this while you apply. If it's a grant, so what is the minimum amount you can apply for? What is the maximum amount? So for you, again, to have a bit of an idea on that. And that touches on the money. And yeah, so there is money. It's difficult to apply for money. Depends. Depends what you want to get funded. But so on an international level, there is there are grants that exist, especially if you have found an opportunity, you have been selected for a residency, but you still miss some funding in order to make it happen. You can apply for some grants. If you are from Czech Republic, for instance, there will be some grants specifically because you are Czech that will support you to go to XYZ country. And there we start touching upon, I mean, money is never neutral. I mean, none of this is neutral. You go to a country, you are a foreigner, like we are touching about so many things that are charged, like you bring a context with you and so on. And money, again, yeah, it's public funders, they have responsibility towards the country from where the money is coming from, or the city, so they have responsibility towards the constituent. Of course, it's tainted of cultural diplomacy, of political choices. I mean, all of this is a reality in which we all operate. So you might decide to be extremely critical to that. It's up to you to decide where you put your cursor in all of this, on what you are ready to accept or not. As an emerging artist, it's very difficult to make those choices because at the end of the day, you want to take part in an international opportunity. And I'm saying all of this, I work, as I was saying, in the music industry at the moment. I get money from Amazon and from, I mean, not me myself, but the projects I work for. From big corporations, from like where you're like, oh my God, this is, makes me itch inside, I'm not okay. But at the same time, it's, yeah, I make sure that this money goes to the right places. So like, there are a lot of questions around that, a lot of ethical questions that you should be asking yourself because this money will support you. You might be requested to put a logo on your website, on a flyer, on a poster, on an image, on Instagram. So like, just be aware of this. It's not a bad thing at all. It's not a good thing necessarily. It's just something for you to know. But I'm saying all of this because you are building a relationship with a funder. Even before you apply, like just when you encounter people, when throughout all the professional meeting you are going to do, you will meet people who work for those funds or people who will later work for those funds. So it's part of your ecosystem. And it's great. I mean, like you need people who will fund what you do, and that's freaking amazing. But so it's important to understand their priority. Like, why would they fund you? Why would they fund your trip from Czech Republic to Germany? Sorry, I'm going to come back to you. That's just easy for me right now. Also because I know the people you mentioned. So anyway, but if you want to go to like, if you want to go to South Africa, some funders are going to be very interested to support that, some others not. And that depends on historical relationship and on heritage between different countries, on economic priorities, as you see that a lot if you want to work with certain Asian countries, that you as a dancer will be used in cultural diplomacy term to build bridges and to open new ways for markets. So, I mean, like you're part of this framework as well. So just, those are priorities that your funders might have, but it can be also, and I know that for the UK, for some funders are very much into rethinking how we travel and traveling green. So if you propose certain new ways of thinking about dance, about performing arts, about your practice as an artist to them, they will be really super enthusiastic to try this out with you. So it's good to know a bit what they are interested in, and you see that on what type of call they put out. So what the priorities of the funders are is quite important. Yeah, and that's just generally something to go back to. What are common mistakes and to avoid them? I'm going to go back to this in a minute. But in terms of funding sources, so the bottom line is start looking where you're based, the city where you're based, the country where you're based, the city where you're from, the country where you're from, the place where you studied also. So those are the usual suspect when it comes to funding something internationally. Those are usually the ones that are most likely to fund you, to have funds also for that. So it really depends where you are from, and again, like where you're based at the moment. So I'm a bit having problems to go in detail right now, but basically, you might have a national dance center. Sometimes they will have internationalization grants. You might have an arts council. Many countries do have those, so either through the Ministry of Culture or through the Arts Council. They will have programs as well for internationalization, and those are not specific for dance. Those will be multidisciplinary, but it means when they are multidisciplinary that you as dancers can also apply. It's not that you need to cross over to other discipline, it's also within your own discipline. You should also look at grants for emerging talent, say for people who are starting. There are usually more support at that moment of your career because you need it more as well. You don't necessarily have those options. It dries up after like about 10 years of professional practice. There comes a moment where it becomes a bit more difficult to access those grants. But to find all this information, so, and this is also why I think I was invited, On the Move produces cultural mobility funding guides. It's a big PDF. This is a Dutch one that was updated in 2021, published early this year. And in that we list, so it's a PDF, very boring. You find it online through the website of On the Move. You click on mobility funding, and then you find the guides for every country. We have covered every European country, every Asian country. We have a guide for Africa, for the whole African continent. We have one for the performing arts in the US, which dates back from 2015. So it's really out of date, but at least you can see a few things which are where the funding exists and so on. And we have done a guide also for Latin America and the Caribbean. And we update them regularly when we get the funding for it. So we have, you have to check the website. Some dates, I know, for instance, the one for Switzerland is from 2014 because we never got funding again to update that. So some information is really out of date, obviously, because since that time, the landscape has evolved so much. But it will give you already some names and some organization that might still be funding dancers either to go from Switzerland to abroad or from abroad to Switzerland. So if you're invited to a co-production to develop a co-production with a dance center in Zurich, usually that center will have the money. On the very off chance that they don't have the money and you have to self-fund part of your trip, you're welcome to check the mobility funding guide from Switzerland in order to go from wherever you are to Switzerland, but also the mobility guide from the country where you are based now to see if they have mobility funding, so outgoing mobility funding, so from where you are based to that place abroad. Do I make sense so far? Okay. So the mobility funding guide are a resource, you can always check them. They are for every discipline, unless mentioned otherwise. Normally it's really every discipline, and then you can do a Control F in the PDF and just search for dancers, performing arts. Try to be a bit creative with the keywords you're looking for. But this way you can really go through the guide quite quickly and see which opportunity might be relevant for you. So as I was saying, so on a national base where you are based, where you are the resident of, where you are the citizen of, so those are really the immediate one you should be looking at. Cultural Mobility Funding Guide will help you expand this a bit. And then depending on the region of the world where you're based and more or less when you want to travel, there are a few, not so many, but there are a few grants funders who operate transnationally already. So I've put a few here. There are more, but there are not so many, but there are more than that. So Visegrad is a V4 country. Again, that's relevant for you, not really for the rest. So V4 is, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, I would say. Yes, thank you. I see the nodding, that's good. So if you are based in or coming from one of those 4 countries, there are grants, tiny bit, very much in dance also from Visegrad Fund. Fond Roberto Simeta is for the Mediterranean region, quite extended as well, so SWANA, Southwest Asia, North Africa region, so, and also with Europe. So if you want to do a project there or invite people from the SWANA region to something in Europe, you can also check the Roberto Simeta Fund, and they are specifically a travel fund. The Nordic Culture Point, for the Nordic Baltic countries, they have also mobility funding, which is really specifically about, again, like traveling within that region or also to bring other people to that region. It's a bit more rare, but it's mostly for that region, which goes from Iceland to Denmark to the Baltic states, and this whole region. I'm going very quickly on the geography of all of this. And in the last few years, you had a grant from the European Union, a program called ePortunus. Not sure that you probably were still studying at that time, so not able to apply. But basically, ePortunus is a grant from the European Commission covering all Creative Europe countries for anyone based in Creative Europe countries. Sorry, Bush. And to support the mobility in those countries. So that goes from all the EU member states plus, this always varies a bit, but because of treaties being signed at the moment, but it includes Tunisia, Iceland, so the EFTA countries, and a few more. And they have the European Commission, so ePortunus was a pilot project and pilot fund project, and the European Commission just announced that they will continue it and make it longer term under the name Culture Moves Europe, and the first calls are going to be published this September. So we don't know yet what the criteria are going to be, but it's really a funding scheme for travel, for artists, and therefore for dancers in Europe. So that's definitely something you should be eligible to apply for very soon. But yeah, again, nobody knows what exactly it will be all about. On the Move publishes those open call regularly. Like when it comes to mobility funding, that's a really good place to start. We try to keep this information up to date. And when there are one-off funds, we publish them also very much, also outside of Europe. Okay, I'm going to speed up a bit because I'm way more interested in the rest. It's very important for you, all of this, but I'm excited about talking with the rest. So anyway, the funding application. Funding application is not the same as applying for the opportunity. So that's why I'm talking about both. When you find an opportunity, a residency, a masterclass, whatever, you apply for that. Once you're selected for that, or while you're applying for this opportunity, you can also apply for the funding in order to make a budget to cover your costs to be able to do all those activities. So once you have found a fund that you think you are eligible for, again, double check, contact them if it's not clear if you're eligible or not. And then in a funding application, did any one of you ever write a funding application for any kind of grants? Okay, raise your hand if you have, just so okay, cool. For yourself or for a project of a big, I know it's a bit of a...
Small collective.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both.
So feel free to jump in if I say stupid stuff. I definitely can. But so in a funding application, usually you have to first describe your idea, what you are applying for. Like you have to describe what it is you are applying for. Like this sounds stupid, but again, like try to be clear in what you describe, because I have no idea what you want. When I'm reading it, it needs to be like I need to understand what you mean. I'm not in your head. I'm not in your context. So please make it somewhat understandable, that I know where you want to go, what you want to do, why you want to go there, like the goals that you set, try to put them forward, the motivation for that. Why is it beneficial for you to take part in this international opportunity? What will be the impact on your career? It doesn't need to be like, I'm going to be a superstar and have 1 million followers. Like, it's not what I want to know. It's more like it will connect me to that dance scene that I have been studying, and it will enable me to develop my next work. Even if you don't know yourself, if it will actually help you develop that next work, this is the intention you have in terms of what kind of impact this mobility might have on your work. Important, your budget. Be realistic. Don't ask necessarily for the minimum amount. It's not necessarily because you ask the minimum that you have more chances to get it, to be honest. And if you ask for the maximum amount, like, you really, really, really need to justify why you ask for the max. Be realistic. Just write the budget for yourself, how much it's going to cost, who is covering what. So, and there are some, I think I might have a form, so an Excel sheet somewhere on my computer on the type of cost you ask for. That exists somewhere. This is something probably, a few platforms have. I have to look it up, but what kind of cost you can ask for. But basically, when you write a budget for an international activity that you want to do, so any kind of mobility opportunity. You have to think of, obviously, the travel, the accommodation, the food you are going to eat, if you need a visa or not, and the same thing for as many people are involved in the project as needed. The artist's fee, especially if you work with other people, the technician's fee as well, the people you will have to pay or have to be involved in creating this project with you. The fee for an event as well. If you go to Tanzmesse, you have to pay, except if you're invited or whatever, but otherwise you have to pay a ticket to attend something or to register for a masterclass. So those as well, I don't know, so try to be as, that's not what you are going to send to your funders, that's not what I'm saying, but in a preparation phase, write all of this down, have a clear, realistic budget in front of you on what would make it possible for you to go there, and X%, 2-3% at least on a kind of buffer to make it the ideal case scenario of what kind of budget you would be applying for. Then look at the funder, what they're funding. Maybe they're only funding your travel cost and that's it. And then the production cost and all of this, they will not fund, or the visa cost, they will not fund. So then you will have to either pay this yourself or have your grandmother pay for it, or find another fund and apply for multiple funds in order to make this work. So that's basically the budget that you need to present. The more precise you are, the better it makes it for the fund to know that you are actually serious about that, that it's not that you have great friends in London because you want to visit the queer scene there, and you have this party you absolutely want to go to, and therefore you make a full funding application around it because you're utterly broke. We can read through that, obviously, seriously. You're welcome to try, but be smart if you do that and try to really create a full project around it and make a budget and so on. But if you have taken the time to make a budget to explain why you need to go to this party in London, I'm like, okay, there is some research element through this, so that makes it a tiny bit more likely that you would actually get the fund. And as we were saying before, your bio, your CV, so your work, show your work in a way that makes sense for you. Once you have written your funding application and the budget as well, ask for someone to read it for you. Not the day of the deadline. Seriously, don't. This is awful. If people ask me to read that, I need at least a week because I'm busy. So be mindful of that. But try, really ask for help, because someone will be able to tell you if it's all talking from your own mind, and if it doesn't make any sense, then at least someone will tell you before the funds tell you, yeah, we don't get it. Keep it short. You see, I talk a lot. So, writing rants it's tricky for me. But, when recently I was reading applications, I had 1 week to read and advise on 98 applications, plus my normal work to do. It was hell. I hated people who wrote a long text for nothing, and you're just make short sentences. Don't make sentences that are 3 paragraphs long. Keep it short. Make, really break your sentences. I know it's dumb, but please just don't underestimate how much easier it makes it for people to understand your work, where you keep it short, try to formulate it with words that are not too, we are not asking you about your curatorial vision. That's what I'm saying, basically. Don't make it into something that only 5 persons on Earth can understand, because you want it to come across and you want it to be funded. And while you're doing all of this, so what is important, what will be relevant later on for you, is to know more or less when you can expect results from that fund, because you need to be able to plan the rest of your weeks and months ahead. So when you apply, the deadline is clear, but try to see already when you can expect an answer and what kind of reporting requirement this grant is asking from you, because if they are asking about 3 months of work extra once you have gotten the grant, maybe it's actually not worth it, because you will be just producing paperwork and not being busy as a dancer, but being busy as just a script. So that's just a lot of things. So I've been through a few of those. So I have a good friend of mine. She has been reading so many applications. She was like, okay, like I need to put this out there, like the biggest mistakes. Like just please, like please do that. Well, don't do that, but do those points. So present details about the activity for which you ask for funding. So like if you are asking for someone to fund your trip to London for the queer party, explain the queer party, just give a few details on that. Don't tell me about the queer scene in London, tell me about that specific party. I want to know one thing. Present what you will be doing there as well, like you are the main performer and they can't do the party without you. So obviously, like this is your presence at that event is needed. Like again, one sentence doesn't take a lot of words, but just like make it very clear. Show off, that's another bullet point completely. Like, do not undersell yourself. Be proud of what you have achieved. State it. State the degree you've had. Whatever it is. State the masterclass you've done. State the people you've worked with. Because I don't know that. And again, like if I'm reading 99 applications in a week, make my life easy. Just state that. It's not name dropping. It needs to be like, but it's more about you've done that work. This part is really important. The stuff that really resonates for you, just put it forward. Think about your reference. That's also, like if you tell me this artist from Bavaria is really fan of your work, I'll be like, okay, just requires from me as a jury to go and Google the name of that artist. And I'm like, okay, I don't have time for that. So try to think also what would, if you say that you were in a class with Walter and Bush, then at least I can be like, okay, yeah, that makes a bit more sense. I know where to place you on the scheme of the whole dance ecosystem in Europe. So try to understand from your context. If you apply for something in Czech Republic, try to reference something in Czech Republic for them to kind of place you somewhere on the scale of everything. So we don't have to spend too much time Googling all the reference that you put out there. If you have achieved something, try to also explain like the impact it has had. And I don't have any example in my mind right now. Wait, because I think I probably wrote this down somewhere. Yeah, so if you have performed at this or that festival, like the fact that you have performed there, like, okay, it's great, but then how many people were there? How many people saw your work? Did you get a review, a critic, something, a text from that? Like the fact that you perform somewhere is really good and it's an achievement in itself, but then try to contextualize it for us so we don't have to run after all those facts and try to fill in the gaps of your funding application. Trying to understand like the different things. So activity versus output versus impact. Those are words that even I have problem with, but those activities, what you do concretely. The output, the mission. So this is how you do it, what makes it special, and then the vision and the aim. It's more like the achievement, success. But so those are different words that explain different part of your the activity that you are going to do. You, at the stage where you are, you might not need it, but as you go and apply for bigger production grant and so on, those words are going to start to be important and try to really understand, like, okay, this is an activity, but it's not the achievement. So what you do is not what you want to achieve. Like you might want to go to a festival in order to get reviews, in order to become a very famous artist. So that would be the aim, the success, but then you see that all those stages and you apply for funding for the first part of the activity with the hope of achieving the last part. But it's good for you in how you present what you talk about to be able to distinguish those parts. Explain your budget. So that's also like, as I was explaining before, you make all your budget and everything, and then you realize you want to bring 5 artists from Korea to do this work with you and for you in a collaboration in Croatia, and you just put so you just tell me in the application, like, yeah, I want to do an international project, and you don't put the detail of the fact that they are from Korea, and you put a massive amount of budget for travel. I'm like, you just want to bring 5 persons. Why are you putting about 8,000 euros for 5 persons? that doesn't make any sense, just for the travel. So somewhere in the text of your application, you need to state that those are people coming from Asia, that due to the pandemic, they will have to stay probably for longer because of, just a few more days, or there are more tests that you have to account for. So put it somewhere in the text. Otherwise, when I'm reading the budget, I will be like, this is a massive amount. This is unrealistic. Out. Again, we don't have a lot of time to spend on reading every application. And then, keep it simple. Don't. Again, it's not the place for your curatorial vision. That's the thing. It's frustrating, but that's the truth. Okay. Are there any questions so far? Sorry, I'm just throwing all of this at you. Yeah.
I was wondering about it's also maybe a big question because there's so many topics now. But so when applying for residencies in Germany, well, for you, I can't tell, but for Germany, maybe also in Great Britain and the Scandinavian countries, there's not the amount of working hours they pay you, but it's more of a general fee per month. And I was wondering if there, and also I know for Norway and Germany, there's from some dancing, there are some recommendations for the prices or the hours, the work, no. So is there something like Excel or an OQ for minimum wages on a European scale? Because otherwise it's always you're always underfinanced and it's so easy to put the budget too low. So
So the easy answer is no, there is not. It's a work in progress. I mean, and also it depends on the art form you work in. So we are now talking only about dance. I'm trying to think of also just generally. There are talks at the moment on, but again, that doesn't relate to you. There are talks on developing the status of the artist in Europe and trying to have more of a social security minimum and a harmonized system in Europe. This is definitely not reached. I don't know, to be honest, for if there are, I mean, in any case, there are not minimum wages throughout Europe for the arts. So in that sense, there would not be such an overview. A lot of places are also not paying you. Residencies that pay artists are still not the majority. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind when you apply, but that's also what you can apply for in terms of fundraising and applying for grants yourself. Lena? Yeah.
It's just a comment in terms of the residencies and Roberto Casarotto, he will also be here talking specifically on that. So you're lucky to have this knowledge in the room. But I would also say in terms of the wages, it's me, when I worked as a creative producer, I used the residencies to be part of creating a production. So I would know that I would be looking for a 2-week residency that would be part of a larger scheme, which would be creating a production. So in that sense, I could, as a creative producer, secure that you, as a dancer, had a salary attached because it was part of the production process. So it's kind of breaking a lot of things down. So it's not, of course, it's not an immediate solution, but it's just part of the thinking. And then I think it's also this thing of building more opportunities around that. So if you are in residency, exactly as you mentioned before, can I give a class, can I give a lecture, is there a source of income that I can attach to specific days, not all the way through being in residence, because being in residence is also concentrating on your work. So, but as a dance community, we think on all the different sources and we look at the opportunities.
Definitely, and indeed, a lot of those budget considerations, when talking already about something that is going to be a co-production, so a production and a co-production, the fundraising is not usually done by the dancers, fortunately, because seriously, I don't know how we would manage working anymore. So usually those fees are going to be applied for through the funds, through the bigger production, and that would be the case in most countries, that those fees are already included, because the co-production budget has been secured beforehand. but then, as everything has been applied beforehand, you don't have any room for negotiating it, or very little room for you to negotiate the fee that you want to get, because basically if you are going to be selected in that co-production, the budget is already put together and you don't have any means to really increase that budget beyond what the producers have been able to put together. Not the best answer, I'm sorry. Okay. So I want to go a bit more on the implication of mobility. So I have about, not too many more slides, but quite a few important ones. So when you go abroad, you come with who you are, with the language that you have, with the artistic language, the artistic voice you have, which is all coming from a certain context and tradition. You bring that with you, but people that you meet will have a certain reaction to that through their own history and through their own perspective. So all of this is not neutral. It's really important to realize all of this and to engage with that. I'm talking in English right now, even though I'm French and we are in Germany. I mean, like all of this, like it's all charged. It has a meaning, and it's important to realize this and to be humble in this process, because you are a guest in that process. You are not. You have to be curious. You have to be open to this experience. And it can be difficult. You have the right to be tired after so many hours of your journey. And still, when you arrive somewhere, you need to just really be present and be yourself and be humble to the fact that someone is hosting you. Even if the conditions are bad, like there is still, you have to at least be open and try to open that conversation. What I would recommend in order to prepare for that is especially nowadays, is to have a conversation over Zoom, to know what the working language is at the place where you are going, to know if they have worked with people from your country already or from your artistic context, to be able to know in which area you're going to be entering. So that's a way to prepare for it. There is an inherent inequity within working internationally as well. Coming from Western Europe, I mean, we are both, in terms of public funding, it's where there is the most public funding and just the most money circulating in the arts, especially when talking about the performing arts. I mean, this is overfunded compared to just other part of Europe and then other part of the world. So even if you are in a very precarious position as a dancer and you don't make a lot of money, you are infinitely more supported than in other places where you will be collaborating with. And you have this privilege coming there. You have to know about it. You just have to remember it, be conscious of it. And it's not, again, that you need to take the burden of the world on your shoulder, but just to know that you are operating within that framework. And even if you are an underrepresented voice in your context where you operate back home, you come to another context where you will be seen as having more power than others, and the perspective that you have and how people are perceiving you is going to shift around you as well. And it can be very confronting. It's not something that's easy to go through, especially when you are usually in the minority and usually in a very specific space, and all of a sudden you are being thrown in your face that you are the colon. It can be very disorientating, but it's very much a reality, and you have to be capable of knowing your own limit through that, but processing the fact that this is how people might perceive you. When you come with a grant as well, I mean, maybe people have been trying to just get paid for their work and they never manage, and you come there and you have a grant and you're paid to do stuff, which they do for free, like all of this. It's, again, not that you have to give them money, not at all, but it's just all of this is inherent of how the economics of working internationally are structured at the moment. I think a lot of people are trying to change the structure, but still you are entering at this very moment in space, in time, where this is still a reality. And then another implication, obviously, is the environmental impact. There are possibilities to I mean, you can think ahead and travel in a more sustainable way. There are moments where it's also not possible because you will have a show that's paid so well and that you're touring and you have so many dates that you have to do some stuff that is not logical either. So try to plan it in advance, try to see how much slowing down you can do and how much extra days you can afford staying somewhere or taking a train that will take 15 hours because you have so many switches and so on. Like, how can you build this within your practice? It's not always possible, again, but say try to see how this also limits what you can do, what you want to do. If you are going to go somewhere in South America, how can you afford staying longer? How can you, like, if you are going to tour there, can you try to link that to a residency as well? How can you build something that is a bit more sustainable from a green mobility perspective, so on a deeper mobility, a longer mobility, trying to find partners nearby. So this requires another way of thinking, which is not necessarily embedded in the dance sector at all at the moment. A lot of people are thinking about it. Some experiments are being done. Some more, some artists who have achieved a certain status can afford being very vocal about this and being very upfront. But it doesn't mean that you can at this time. So try to think on how you can embed this within your practice, where your limit is, also how much you want to go internationally, how much you need to go internationally because of economics. Again, you need to be able to pay for your rent. So this is stuff that will play in your mind as you go in the coming year, 2 years, 3 years. And try to keep coming back to this thinking on how far you want to go, how far you can afford not to travel, and so on. And the last paragraph here, it's very much relating to a common. So I was hosting a panel around this topic earlier this year in the music industry, and I had someone, André Leroux from South Africa, who is a hilarious person. Like he's absolutely brilliant, but he has a certain way of putting stuff. And I was a moderator, and you will see, like I didn't know what to say after his intervention. He was like, "Don't be an asshole. It's simple. Don't be an asshole." We're like, "Okay, that's a turn. Cool." What he was saying was just be a good human being. Engage in stuff. Don't assume that people will serve you. Don't, because you're the foreigner. Don't assume that people are waiting for you. They have their lives. Don't assume things. Build trust. Be humble in this process. Be open. Be curious. Try to just embrace the fact that you are a guest and people are making time for you. They are developing a project with you. They are curious about you. So that should humble you and not put you on a pedestal. So don't be an asshole. Like, I hope that will just remain in your mind when you travel, That really stuck with me. He went on saying that about 7 or 8 times in a row. I was like, oh my God. Be curious about other people's work, engage with them, just go see their shows. It sounds very simple, but when you're traveling and you have to develop your own work and you want to meet your own people, and then all of a sudden someone invites you to yet another thing and you're like, I don't have time, but just try to just take a moment, make the time. You won't be there in a week time again, so try to just be like, okay, yes, it's an adventure, I'm part of this. Be humble and open in that. Again, it sounds dumb, so dumb, but it becomes much more difficult when you're on a schedule and people, you have said you would do stuff and you're invited to more, and how to do it all. Or just say to someone like, I don't have time now, can we meet another time? Try to be flexible and be open to that experience as well. You will end up doing karaoke at 4 a.m. somewhere in the world with crazy people. It's great, and this is your best friendship ever. So this is. On a trickier one, I think I read also that some people are not from the EU. Also, our UK friends by now. So there are a few things that are a bit more tricky when it comes to working internationally, and I have only a few minutes, so again, going to go through this very quickly. So imagine all of this is sorted. You have an opportunity. You have a residency for 9 months in Slovenia, and you've secured the funding, and it's all peachy, it's all great. You're about to go there. Do you know what kind of health insurance is going to cover you? Do you know if you are going to teach some stuff? What kind of social security are you paying? Where are you paying that? What is, if you're making income, in which country are you going to pay taxes? If you are able to send, are you supposed to send invoices? How is the money going to be paid to you? We're also the fund that you are getting. You applied for a fund and you got the money. Is that going to be taxed or not? So is it going under income tax or is it free of tax? All of this you need to figure out. In some cases, the grant you get, they are completely tax-free. So meaning that you are not going to even pay income tax on it. But it's very difficult to pinpoint that and put it in the right way in your accounting. And an accountant is usually looking at that and they're like, yeah, I don't get it. Like, you travel too much. This is crazy. Just, I don't want to deal with you anymore. So that's usually, you will have a lot of stuff where you are left alone with an invoice and you don't even know what to do with that. And you collecting money and you're like, I don't know even how much money I'm going to make out of this. There's written 1,000 euros, but will I actually get 600? Was it with or without VAT? Is it taxed? So, if you are touring with with stuff with you, can you just take whatever you want across border? A set, a costume, I don't know. Can you import? Well, can you export? Can you travel with material that you want for your show, or can you source it somewhere else? All of this will have really real implication to your mobility. In one slide, I will explain a bit like where you can find help for all of this. But so all of this is really important for you to prepare before you go somewhere, to make this list on where are you going, where are you from, where are all your papers from, where are you going? Do you need a visa also to go somewhere? Do you need a work permit? Do you need, and all of this you have to sort in advance. Are there also other points you need to consider? The world is not safe in the same way in every place. Homophobia is one thing. The fact that homosexuality is illegal is another. And in some countries, that's a reality. So how can you behave on the street? How can you behave behind closed door? What is going to be expected of women in public space? Again, depends on where you go. And you might want to be very critical about this. But again, you're a guest, and this is a very real consideration. If at some point, as a woman, you wanted to do stuff in the public space in Egypt, you could not do it, either alone or also without a veil and so on, and especially in the public space. And you might, as an artist, as a foreign artist, you might want to go there and criticize and make a piece about it, especially in the public space. What you do when you do that is that you put your host in a very bad position, because you go, you leave, you might be banned from that country, whatever, or you don't go for 5 years, you're fine. The people who hosted you, they're left with all the shit that you sort of steered, and they have to deal with the aftermath. Not only with the police or their funders or the ministries, but also with their neighbors, with the people who trusted them to create a safe space, who trusted them to invite international artists, who trusted them to be this host in their community. So be mindful of that. You have the right to do this, no problem. Like, really, just you are an artist, you are dancers, you have this possibility to engage with the world in that way. Just build this trust with your host beforehand if you want to go there, if you want to be on that level of public criticism. So, because it's something to negotiate, and it's not only about you, especially on that aspect, especially on an international spectrum. So just like go with that in your mind. But just again, for you, in the body that you have, in the identity that you have, just research beforehand, talk with friends over there, but also with your host, if you trust them enough already with your identity and with who you are. I hope so, if you are building this relationship, but yeah, you are building it. So sometimes it's not easy to be upfront with everything, but then try to research also, especially for LGBTQA+, the networks that exist, not specific to dance, but generally for that community in that specific country, to know what kind of space you can fall back to if something happens. I mean, I'm with a project we do with Key Change, we bring a lot of artists to Poland, especially as women and queer women. It's not necessarily the easiest space to be on stage and to take stands. So, you know, like I'm trying also to warn them and to prepare them as part of my job, but this is for you to keep in mind. So yeah, so all of those things, just, it's part of your mobility. The more you prepare, the easier it will be. That's just what I'm saying. In that way, and not on those aspects, but more on the really hardcore social security and taxation stuff, which we are like, why? There is help, there is really good help, and for free also. What I'm going to say, it's all for free. So going back to Czech Republic, there is a mobility info point. So the Arts and Theatre Institute, they are a member of On the Move. They have many different organizations, or projects and programs that they run. So one of them is for the Czech performing arts. But then one of the other branch they have is a Czech mobility info point, where they will provide information a bit for you to go from Czech Republic to abroad, but also if you get money from abroad and you're registered as a taxpayer in Czech Republic, they can help you navigate how do you pay taxes in Czechia without being double taxed. So that's quite nice. And they will also be able to help you invite other people from abroad to Czech Republic on what kind of rules and regulation apply in Czech Republic. They would know that. And they provide this information for free. So this one and about 12 others are part of the mobility info point. We have that also in Germany with touring artists, in France with Mobiculture, and Portugal. We are building one in Slovenia at the moment, Dance Info Finland, and their partners, they do this for Finland. A few others. We are setting one up in the UK at the moment. We have one in the US. And those are people who can help you with visa, work permits, taxation, and a few other topics. Depending, we have one in the Netherlands that I helped set up. We have one in Belgium as well. Anyway, so those are the mobility info points. You can find them on the Move very quickly, and they provide all this information for free, specifically for the art and culture. So we know very well what applies in terms of the status of the artist, the status of the performing arts in France, which is like a bubble of its own. Beautiful bubble, but a bubble. Then you have PEARL, which is the Association of Performing Arts Employers in Europe. And they have developed together with EFA, the European Festival Association, what they call the ultimate cookbook for cultural managers. So you have 2 here, but I think there are 4 or 5. And those are like PDF, about 20 pages. One is about third country visa national. So if you're a third country visa national coming to Europe, what you have to do. There is one on social security. There is one on copyright. And there is one on taxation and VAT. So how to deal with all of this. And they're seriously really easy to understand those concepts. They will explain those different concepts, what they mean in different countries, and help you compare between those different countries how things work. So you can navigate at least a tiny bit and understand what you step into without needing a specialized accountant who nobody else can pay anyway. Then, so the one on the bottom right, Your Europe is a free service from the European Union where, as a European citizen or European resident, EU resident, you can ask questions to lawyers for free. They will not know about the specific of the dance sector, like the intermittent du spectacle system in France. I mean, that goes a bit beyond what they know. They know the general case scenario, but if it is about relocation from Germany to Malta, and you have questions about taxation and stuff like that, they can help you with that. Last but not least, up right is the dance passport from the International Federation of Actors. And this is an association of the different unions for dance in Europe. Not all unions are part of it, but quite a few. To help dancers specifically with their rights in Europe and what a union would do and especially if you're a member of a union, you're even more protected, but if you're not, they will still help you. And basically they provide, it's a way for a union, so the service that a union would have for you, for instance, in Germany, and you go to Spain, and then you don't have a union anymore because you're in another country. So basically, it's a reciprocal agreement that the Spanish Union for Dance is going to represent you, support your interest, support you in negotiating contracts, and in social security aspects as well. So this is something for you to look into specifically for dancers, and they are still active. And they also, through FIA, so the Federation, the International Federation of Actors, they also have with a dance passport, scheme for retrainings for dancers, so a transition scheme, because at some point in your career, you might not have the body that you have now, and you might want to transition to another thing in your career, and they help you financially to do that. I'm coming to my last slides. Yeah, so there is help. All of those helps are for free, except for the unions. I mean, then you need to be a union member and so on, but still the dance platform will offer all this info for free. And the basic support is also for free. So yeah, so what happens next? All of this is done, you've prepared, you're like, okay, I'm going, I'm on my plane, I'm there, I'm at the place. So as I was saying, connect to other people's work, make friends. I mean, like, yeah, that Lena did a full lecture about this, so I don't need to go in that. What I want to say though is slow down as much as you can. Before you go, try not to book your agenda with too much stuff that you want to do when you're somewhere, because more activities will pop up. Slow down also in the sense of try to carve some time, not off, but not to go from one opportunity to the next, because your brain will still be full from where you have been, where you are and where you have been. And you need some buffer time at home or a buffer time somewhere, and as much as possible avoid, if possible, again, to run into just the next opportunity, the next meeting, and the next stuff abroad. It's very difficult to do that because, again, economically speaking, it doesn't work, but try nonetheless to carve half a day with a friend, half a day, 2 days, a week, as much as you can afford to just process all what you have been through. Review the goals, so set the goal list with where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do, if it was this or that type of mobility that you were looking for. So try to review it, go back to this list after your mobility has finished, so you know, like, if your goals were actually realistic, if you were actually looking for that, or if now you would be looking for something completely different. So it helps you also go through the next process and what you want to do next. Stay in touch with the people. Stay in touch with the people that you have met. So social media obviously is easy, but try to go beyond that, to stay in touch with a postcard from your hometown. I don't know, something more personal, something that they know also comes from you, whatever you talked about. Just like following each other on Instagram is easy. Staying in touch does require a bit more. And those are people that, not only the dancers that you have met, but also the funders, the hosts that you have seen, that have hosted you, the people from the community, beyond the dance community also, whomever mattered to you, they will in any case continue being part of your ecosystem. You will meet them, you will maybe stay in touch very regularly for the next 5 years, or not. And as I'm now also in my second decade working as a professional, I keep on seeing now the same people I started meeting a while ago, and I'm like, oh, no, you have this job, oh, that's cool, and oh, let's do stuff together. And you keep on building that so many years after. I mean, the people you have here in the room, you might stay in touch with 5 of them, and then and then everything falls apart, and then you see each other again and again, and that's beautiful, that's great, and then, but you have already this shared moment, so try to build on that. Trying to keep in touch is important. And what for me is really important is also this idea of reciprocity. While you are dancers and you might be invited in a certain capacity to go abroad, to take part in a show of someone else, or to work with a choreographer or in a venue or so on, you don't have the same role when you come back home, but you might be able to invite dancers also to your context. You might be able to facilitate a new project with a collective that you have or with a venue you like to work with, and try to suggest those people that you have met from abroad to continue sustaining those relationships internationally. So, and then this means also finding other ways of funding, finding local funding from wherever you're based to develop those international projects. So working internationally doesn't mean going abroad either. It can also mean inviting people in, hosting people, rethinking what you can offer. So not only offering other people to teach about the art, the type of dance that you're doing and so on, but also really hosting them, developing a project like that, setting up a new festival. I mean, I see that so much in the music industry, and people being bored of what is offered or not being accessible for them. And they're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do my alternative stuff. I don't know where they find the energy, but they do it. And there is really those new connections emerging as well. And it's absolutely, endearing and ambitious, but it is something you might want to try doing in a way. If you find the right people and you're like excited to do that, it is possible. I know someone who is setting up two residencies at the moment, one friend in Bulgaria, the other one in France, and they're doing beautiful projects. So it took them a while, but you can also be inspired by what you do and still working as an artist, as a dancer, and try to start creating opportunities for others in your home and bring international in your life in that way as well. That kind of nicely links to my final consideration. This work is incredibly precarious. We saw it with the pandemic, especially on an international level. I mean, like the venues were closed, but like the international stuff has disappeared for 2 years. We are just barely getting back to that. So that's definitely a major consideration. There might be more pandemic, there might be more stuff like that. So it can't be your only source of income yet. For many years, especially in dance, it has been the fact that for a lot of dancers, that was the only way forward. What is difficult with that is that it makes it tricky for you to keep your artistic voice. You become this sponge of everything, but then your identity is less relevant for the choreographer or for other partners, for a venue, for promoters to work with you, because you don't have this identity anymore, this artistic identity. It becomes very difficult to sustain relationships when you are on the move all the time, and especially for personal relationships, especially if your personal relationships are outside of the dance world, people won't understand. I mean, they will be very curious and they will be super proud of you, but also really they can't start perceiving how much of an emotional toll it takes to be on the move all the time, that you spend more time in a hotel room that has no soul than at home, that you wake up in the morning, you don't know where you are. I mean, it has happened to me a few times and I'm like, whoa, okay, I need a break. This is not okay. But it happens and it's weird, and it's a body experience, like seriously, where you're like, okay, I need to slow down and I can't afford it. This is really difficult. And it's still a reality, and we are going back to that post-pandemic. So it is, for me, it's worrisome because we should not be proceeding in that way. So I'm saying all of this to you to just invite you to already try to think about this as much as you can. So to try to remain critical to this, to not jump in yet an opportunity and yet another one, because it becomes difficult to scale it back. And it has a massive impact on your mental health. So I think that's really important for you to just be aware of this before you start really going at this level of career development, which I hope you will, but just try to balance it. And finding partners who help you take control of your time is really valuable. There is a digital dimension that has increased since the pandemic, obviously. This was already present before, but there is more openness from different parts of the ecosystem toward hybrid practices, which is good, which will help you slow down in order to, in any case, connect with people and so on. And so it's up to you also to say where you are really needing to go somewhere in person and where you can actually connect with people or develop ideas together or show each other's work. Through Zoom, I mean, it's not the same, I know, but still see how much you can experiment with the digital part and how much you need to be in person. So yeah, there are a few reading tips that obviously you will receive. Yeah, I can talk about this for hours, so I'm going to shut up. And I'm already over time. But yeah, so that's a bit on taking a leap internationally. There are a lot of different aspects. I'm around for the lunch in any case, but and over social media, over emails as well. Like, don't hesitate to contact me. I will leave my contact detail. But it's a joy to do all of this, honestly. Like, I know I end on a terrible, somber note, like really this kind of precariousness. And so it is beautiful to do. It's just like, know this so you can really enjoy it to the maximum and have a beautiful experience working internationally and having all those contacts without exhausting yourself, because that's really like at the core, you want to be able to create and to dance. And for that, you can't be exhausted. So yeah, finding this balance is really what I would wish for all of you in the coming weeks, months, and years. So yeah, that's from me. And if you have any questions, just don't hesitate also.